everyone receive is a reflection of us.
Welcome. In today's episode, we shall talk about masculine distortion and what it means to society, what it means to understand the input and the implications it has on people. I've written a few pages here with some assistance to help guide us in conversation. So it will take some time. So enjoy, sit back, relax, and let's find out some more. So the other day I tend to feel though that narcissism is, in my experience, more common in female. However, the energy that I'm picking up that resonates this narcissism is predominantly toxic male energy. And I questioned that. And you see, my interpretation of toxic male isn't about men or women. It's not about any of the gender associative terms. What I'm speaking about is the energetic inheritance, the frequency that sits in the collective field, especially in relationships, in dating, modern dynamics. It's a distorted masculine energy playing itself out. This distortion doesn't just show up in men, it shows up in women too. In fact, it shows up in anyone who had to survive without the presence of a healthy masculine blueprint. Because the distorted masculine teaches people that their worth isn't in tenderness or connection, but in defense, in hardness, in control, in keeping distance, in wearing emotional armor. And we've ended up calling these behaviors narcissism. Narcissism isn't gender-traded. It's a survival architecture built from a wounded masculine identity. I'm talking about masculine polarity, the part of consciousness that meant to protect, to provide direction, create boundaries, define identity, and give structure to the self. But when that polarity is wounded, when it gets twisted, when it never had a healthy model to attach to, it turns into things like emotional detachment, defensive identity armor, validation seeking, control instead of connection, power over others instead of power with others. And the interesting part, you can see this distortion, but a lot of people today are noticing it more in women, because so many women have had to put a masculine shield up just to feel safe. In a world where feminine was undervalued, dismissed, or straight up threatened, a lot of women had to adopt this false masculine just to survive. So we ended up with something interesting. A lot of the narcissistic traits we're seeing today are simply feminine beings wearing a distorted mask, because the healthy masculine was missing. When the healthy masculine is absent, the presence, the protection, the truth, the grounded containment, the false masculine rushes in to fill the void, to fill the vacuum. This false masculine is all ego and no essence, all defense and no depth, all control, no connection. And men do it, women do it, because this isn't gender wounded, it's a collective wound. What we're picking up on here is that toxic masculinity and the imprint it has shaped what a lot of people know as strength or self-worth. It's not real strength, it's not real value or worth in who you are, but a performance of it. And that's why everything feels distorted, because people are surviving. It's that survival instinct, that survival mode. And what's interesting is, from this point of view, I've noticed that we're seeing a lot of these tendencies in government, especially here in the Australian government. And sometimes when we look at it, the system, the governments, or a leadership structure, what we think we're looking at people is not true. We're looking at an archetype playing out, a collective energy that's either healthy or wounded. And right now in Australia, like much of the world, I know, we're seeing the very clear expression of the wounded masculine. To be honest, they're very weak. So, by this I mean, what is control instead of protection? Well, a truly healthy masculine energy creates safety. It stands steady without needing to dominate. But a wounded one? It confuses protection with control. And so our policies start to look a lot like restriction, surveillance, fear-based decisions, paternalistic, we know what's best for you type mentalities. It's the same survival logic you've probably experienced in people who say, I will protect you by overpowering you. But systems can inherit the same wound. Identity over integrity. A healthy leader acts from purpose, from truth, from service to others. But a distorted masculine field, in politics especially, starts obsessing over the image, the branding, the election cycle, staying in power. Integrity gets replaced with performance. Service replaced with strategy. That's narcissism, but it's structural. So, the strength performed, but not embodied. So real strength is presence, it's clarity, it's a calm center that doesn't need noise. But what we often see instead is aggression instead of decisiveness, avoidance instead of honesty, blame instead of accountability. It's the same false masculine shield we've talked about in individuals, now amplified through institutions. It looks like strength, but it does not feel like strength. It's so popular amongst politicians, and it just goes to show you that all of these are exactly what they do. The feminine principle is missing. Not women. No. The feminine. It's not about gender. It's about feminine polarity, the part of consciousness that carries intuition, compassion, creativity, community care, emotional intelligence, regenerative vision, spiritual connection. These qualities aren't just underrepresented, they are actively undervalued. Because systems built on control cannot tolerate what they cannot predict. And so the system becomes cold. It becomes transactional, corporate, disconnected, functional, but not soulful. It works, but it doesn't guide or lead us. And the result of all of this is people feel unheard. When the feminine principle is ignored, either in society or within ourselves, we see multiple systems play out, multiple symptoms play out. Mental health starts spiraling, growing distrust in leadership, disconnection from land and identity, burnouts even more, numbness, a longing for something real and human. This is why so many people and Australians feel tired, not physically but spiritually, because they're living inside a structure built from imbalance. The narcissism we see in individuals and the narcissism we see in the governments comes from the exact same wounded mentality, a distorted masculine trying to hold power without inner foundation. A system terrified of vulnerability, terrified of loss of control, disconnected from intuition, both its own and its people's. Australia in the world isn't broken. Its governing archetype is wounded, and people can feel that, even if they can't name it. So, I've been sitting on something for quite a while, and it's probably going to challenge a lot of people's ideals. But I don't believe men were ever meant to rule. And I don't believe women were ever meant to rule either. Because the moment you say rule, you're already talking about dominance and dictatorship. You're already implying someone has to be beneath someone else. And that whole framework, that's the corruption. That's the distortion. That's the part of the story we inherited, not the truth we are born with. We were never meant to rule over each other. We were meant to rule as one. We can still have leaders. We can still have positions of authority. But authority doesn't mean hierarchy. It means responsibility. It means service. It means you lead because you're the one holding the lantern or the flame, not because you're the one sitting on top. So what happened? And this is another uncomfortable position we place ourselves in, is that over centuries the distorted version of the masculine took over. Not the true masculine, the corrupted one. The one that suppresses instead of protects, and the one that conquers instead of collaborates. And to maintain that distortion, the feminine had to be reduced. So what did we see? How did it happen? Men were sent to war, generation after generation, killing off the strong men, the wise, the builders, the protectors. And those who survived, they came home broken, traumatized, disconnected from their own spirit. It wasn't an accident or strategy. It was by design, which allowed weak men to stay in charge. Then you weaken the food supply. Strip the nutrients, pump everything with chemicals, and you end up with men who don't feel like men anymore. Their hormones crash, their instincts dull, their fire goes out. And then on top of that, you push agendas that confuse identity at its core. You flood culture with narratives to distort sexuality, distort purpose, distort connection. And suddenly the masculine doesn't know what it is anymore. And the feminine? Well, they don't know where they belong. Then you pump up the feminist movement, not the true empowerment kind, but the industrial weaponized version, the one that's designed to make women more masculine, so to make them reject their own nature and to flip their polarity completely. Then the masculine becomes weak. The feminine becomes exhausted. And the balance once again collapses. And every single time, and this is the part that most people are unwilling to see, is that every time humanity starts naturally to drift back into balance, open their eyes and see clearly, another war occurs, another global disaster, another crisis, something that forces everyone into fear and survival mode again, which resets their entire system. It's like the moment the energies start harmonizing, there's an interruption, a redirection, a distraction. And I'm not saying this to blame them. I'm saying this as a part of observation, from a place of pattern recognition, from a place of remembering what balance actually feels like. Because at the end of the day, it was never meant to be men ruling, or women for that matter. It was meant to be unity and togetherness. The masculine and the feminine walking together, not above each other, not below, just side by side. So who is the masculine energy? And how does it complement the feminine? Well, the masculine is actually meant to be. It just is. Just not the distorted version that we've been fed. Not the wounded version we see repeating in daily life and history, but the true original role of masculine energy. Because when you strip away all the conditioning, all the control systems, all the programming. The masculine was never meant to dominate the feminine. The masculine was meant to serve the feminine, but not in submission, in devotion. The masculine is the structure, the container, the backbone, the stabilizing force. Think of it like this. The feminine is the ocean, deep, creative, intuitive, cosmic, constantly birthing new worlds. And the masculine is the shoreline that gives the ocean direction. It gives it form and safety to express itself fully. The feminine is the inspiration. The masculine is the action. The feminine dreams, the masculine builds. The feminine feels, the masculine holds. The feminine births the vision, the masculine brings it into reality. That's what balance looks like. It's not one being above the other, it's one empowering each other. Not just in politics or religion, in relationships too. The masculine's true role is to protect, not possess, to support, not suppress, to stand strong enough so that the feminine can unfold without fear, to be such a stable, grounded, anchored presence that the feminine finally feels safe to rise in her full power. A masculine man is not afraid of a powerful woman. A masculine man is activated by a powerful woman because her power gives him strength and direction, gives her intuition to him clearly and provides clarity. Her creativity gives him purpose. The true masculine wants the feminine to expand, does not limit her, because her expansion gives him something sacred to protect. And the feminine, her role is just as important. She awakens the masculine man. She reminds him of why he builds, why he fights, why he stands tall. She softens his edges without breaking his strength. She connects him back to his heart so he doesn't become a machine. She brings color to his structure, breath to his stillness, and meaning to his mission. The masculine provides the direction, and the feminine provides the why. When they are in balance, it's not a hierarchy, it's a dance. The masculine says, I've got you, you are safe. Expand as you will, create and dream. And the feminine replies, I believe in you. Stand tall, move those mountains and build the future. That's what balance is like, that's what we lost. And that's what we're remembering now. So, because of all of this, if we zoom out far enough, where we have an overlooking view, we start to see that what we're dealing with today are all the toxic relationship dynamics, the manipulation, the narcissistic loops in government, the home, the office, the sexual confusion. It's not accidental, it was by design this way. It's a design built to distort. Because when you corrupt the masculine and suppress the feminine, you create this weird vacuum where people aren't relating from soul anymore. They're relating from wounds, wounded programming from trauma and fear. And that's exactly where the distortion begins. Suddenly, love becomes control. Sex becomes validation. Intimacy becomes a battlefield, and relationships become these psychological tug-of-wars instead of sacred unions. Fascinating. You see, men chasing dominance because they're disconnected from their true power. You see, men and women chasing safety because they've been taught the world isn't safe for them. And in that chaos, people start manipulating just to survive emotionally. That's where the narcissism comes from. That's where the gaslighting comes from. And the trauma bonding comes from. It's all a side effect of losing our energetic balance. And the more and more people that realize this whole dynamic, the sexual distortion, the emotional manipulation and power games, is a type of slave mentality. Because the best way to control a population is to keep them disconnected from their own individual identity and from each other. If you make a man forget who he is, he becomes easy to control. If you make a woman doubt her worth, she becomes easy to silence. If you distort sex, you distort connection. And once connection is distorted, the whole species becomes fragmented, isolated, easier to influence, easier to program, easier to keep asleep. Most people think control happens from governments or laws. But the deepest form of control happens in relationships, in the home, in the bedroom, in the psychological atmosphere of love. Because if you can control how people love, you can control how they live. So yeah, what you're seeing today is a kind of spiritual enslavement, not with chains, but with people's own beliefs, with insecurities, with sexual confusion, with unhealed wounds that keep repeating themselves through every generation. But once you see the distortion, you cannot unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you then stop participating in it. And that, my friend, is where the liberation begins. So it is with that, I leave you with peace and love. Take care.